Welcome back, Hoosier fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report as we get set here for Indiana football, number 2 in the country, hosting a huge game on Saturday against the Red Hot. What did you just say, Grant? Number 2 in the country.
Wow.
That says it all right there. Got a big one on Saturday with UCLA. They're kind of like we said on the IU report this week. They're kind of the darling of college football right now. They fired their coach after an 0-4 start. And since then, they've been a whole different football team. They've been rejuvenated. They've come out of nowhere, have won 3 in a row. They're 3-4 on the year. They got a decent quarterback. They got a likable interim head coach, and they got an offensive coordinator that just has a unique head of hair. So everybody feels like that they need to hop on his train. So it's going to be a big test for Indiana. Every game is, of course, especially in conference play. No matter how good or bad the team is, it's always good to look good against a conference team. And I think Indiana's got another really good shot to improve its record to 8-0 on Saturday, Mike.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And how do you upgrade hair from Tino Sunseri is the first question, and UCLA somehow managed to pull it off. The most majestic head of hair in college football last year was Tino, and now you bring this new Hutsell kid in, and it's just it's not fair. It's just not fair.
Looking at this matchup here on Saturday, Mike, this is a game where, as Michelle Garmon of the Tipton Tribune and Elwood Call Leader hops in with us now. And guys, this is a game coming up on Saturday that we sound like a broken record because we said it before, but it's hard to believe that a month ago, if we sat here and said that the toughest game on Indiana's schedule for the back half of the season would be UCLA, it's just unbelievable. So the fact that this UCLA team has been winning the way they have, winning close games, beating Penn State, blew out Michigan State, won a close one against a decent Maryland team. I say decent, they're an okay Maryland team. It's one of those games that Indiana just cannot sleepwalk through on Saturday.
I don't anticipate them sleepwalking through it. I think if there's one thing that we've learned about Coach Cignetti, and one thing that's proven true and why he's only lost 2 games during his short tenure here in Indiana, is that he and his staff, they are week-to-week coaches, and they make their players buy into that. I mean, they hold them accountable every day. If they don't like what they see, they have no bones about letting those players know.
Yeah, and Cignetti, we've talked about it before, has almost a sociopathic gene where he looks for the smallest slight he can find and preys on it. In the Illinois game, everybody was calling Illinois this year's Indiana when Cignetti's sitting there like, what the F? We're still Indiana. And look what he did in that game. And I texted Grant earlier today a picture of Jerry Neuheisel. And you don't think maybe for a little bit that Cignetti's looking across the sideline and thinking, I coached with Nick Saban in 2007, but I had to go coach Indiana University, Pennsylvania. I had to go coach at Elon. I had to go coach at James Madison. I didn't get my job in the Power Four until I was in my 60s. And this little Nepo baby in his 20s writes daddy's last name into a job and runs my guy out of a position, mind you, which we hit on earlier in the week. I just see Cignetti going Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan here and being like, oh, hell no, not this, not us. It's not going to happen to us.
Yeah. And Indiana knows that. Indiana knows what's at stake Saturday. Again, they ran their guy out of town, a guy that was with Cignetti for so long. There obviously was a mentorship there, and he worked with everybody that's still remaining on the Indiana staff, like especially Mike Shanahan. They were co-offensive coordinators last year, but Tino Sunseri was really in charge of Curtis Rourke and in charge of the quarterback play, and actually did a really good job there. But me and Greg were talking about this during the off season on the IU report, is that if you could have lost one assistant coach or coordinator last year, one of your, I guess, 3 or 4 main coordinators, you probably would have chosen it for it to be him. But I think this sends honestly, I think this sends a message to the other guys on Indiana staff, and maybe I'll eat my words here in a couple months and this won't matter. I hope not. But I think this maybe sends a message to guys like Bryant Haynes and Mike Shanahan on the staff that are probably going to be head coaches somewhere one day that, hey, you guys may want to ride this thing out here with me, as in Signetti. You may want to ride this thing out with Sig for a while because, as we've seen with Tino, the grass isn't always greener. So I think that kind of sends a message in that sense. But Tino did not have that team performing offensively where it needed to be. And Jerry Neuheisel kind of has here in these last 3 or 4 weeks. So I guess give him credit to that. But like Mike said, there's no question going to be a motivating factor.
I think a lot of discombobulation at UCLA started at the top, and it was just a trickle-down effect. It was a pretty hopeless situation. I don't know if the discipline was there under Deshaun Foster. Watching Deshaun Foster's introductory press conference at the Big Ten Media Day last year, if you haven't seen it, go take about 5 minutes and watch it. It was one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen somebody put themselves through publicly. So I'm saying he probably had difficulty messaging, and I just don't think his message was getting across to not only the coaching staff, but the players. And it was just a disaster. If you watched UCLA in those first few weeks, it was a joke. The worst team in Power 4, easy. And now we're talking about them as the most dangerous game left on the schedule. And going back to what this means, what Tino means, Tino doesn't just mean something to Signetti and Haynes and Shanahan. Don't forget, Tino means something to Elijah Surratt. Tino means something to Aiden Fisher. He means something to D'Angelo Pons. All those guys were with Tino at JMU too. So they're going to take this a little personally, I think. I don't
Absolutely.
I don't think Tino's going to be in the building. It would be a pretty boss move by Signetti to maybe bring him to the sideline, but I don't necessarily think that he will. But I do think there is a sense of I do think this is a sense of we're going to do this for Tino this week.
How many phone calls do you think that have gone on between, I won't say Signetti and Tino, but Mike Haynes and or not Mike Haynes, Mike Shanahan and Tino? Because Tino knows that personnel, and I don't think he's bound where he can't give a scouting report on the quarterback's weakness, some of the weaknesses.
I don't think there was any NDA when he got fired. And although I did hear Signetti at his presser this week say they haven't watched a second of UCLA under Deshaun Foster and Tino. Every game they've watched has been since the Penn State game. And for good reason. It's two different teams. So I don't necessarily know that they're going to lean too much on what Tino says, but I do think,
I was just thinking
I think there's obviously been communication.
Tendencies.
I think those guys were probably communicating even when Tino still had the job. They were together for so long. Tino was probably leaning on Shanahan where I need some ideas. What do you think about this? So I think there's constant communication.
You'd be surprised how much communication goes on from program to program. And my dad and I were talking about this the other day. Look at last week what James Madison did to Old Dominion there. They absolutely throttled him. You're telling me that Signetti doesn't have some connection still back there at James Madison to give a scouting report or share notes with and get on a call with and email, those kind of things? It definitely goes on. I think it'd be silly to sit here and say that that's not going on this week. But here's my thing. I think we're dwelling on this a little too much about a situation that I don't really think matters. It's a game that Indiana obviously has to have to keep its playoff hopes alive. Every game is a must win from here on out, guys. But UCLA, it's just not only has what Indiana's done this year been unbelievable, but what UCLA has done in the last 3 weeks has just been incredible. Their quarterback, Nico Iamaleava, goes out last week with a late game injury, had to actually be helped off the field, carried off the field, and comes in and leads them on a drive down and sets them up for a game-winning field goal. That's pretty impressive what they were able to do with him. And then the question of is he going to be okay? Is he running on adrenaline? That kind of stuff. And we talked about that he may or may not be questionable. I don't think he's going to be questionable. He's going to play on Saturday. I think of the quarterbacks Indiana's faced here this year, and Mike and I have talked about this, and where they've had trouble with the quarterbacks that can run and that can make plays with their legs, like the guy from Old Dominion. Luke Altmaier couldn't get that done because their defense was just so great that night. Everything was just clicking on all cylinders in the Illinois game. You think of Dante Moore, who was capable of that and then got kind of dinged up, and then Indiana controlled the ball so much in the Oregon game to really take their offense off the field. So, and Nico Iamaleava can do all those things. He can use his legs. He's got a good arm. He played in the SEC for a reason, and Indiana's going to have to be ready to key in on him and try and slow him down defensively.
I trust Coach Haynes a lot. He's obviously proven himself, but this has been a bit of his kryptonite. You left off Gronowski on that list. I was one touchdown in that game, was a rushing touchdown by him.
Yeah.
And they kept drives alive, just like Aiden Childs did early last week, with just being able to move to delay the rush. Indiana wasn't getting to the quarterback because the quarterback had the ability to move away from the rush, and they were converting 3rd and 6. They were converting 3rd and 4, and in some cases even 3rd and 11, because the rush wasn't getting there the way it did against Altmaier. Would they have 6-7 sacks in that game, if not more? And against Dante Moore, they were also able to tee off on him, I think, because of his limited mobility.
I also thought Michigan State did a nice job, because I thought IU defensively kind of came out with some of the same packages they had done the week before, with dropping Kamara back into coverage instead of having him rush. And I thought Michigan State was well prepared for that. But then I thought Indiana, as the game went on, especially in the second half, which I think is what Haynes has done so well, is make of course, Signetti's a part of that, of making adjustments and then changing the look and the scheme up a little bit.
One key point here, and it kind of follows up on what Michelle just said. This will be Indiana's first test without Kellen Wyatt, and that's a huge, huge loss, obviously, for obvious reasons. He was arguably the best pass rusher that Indiana had. I don't think you can replace him with personnel. I think it's up to Haynes and his ability to adjust to figure out a way, okay, how do we replace what he was capable of doing by creating havoc on the defensive line? Because there's not a single defensive end, edge type player Indiana has, especially if Kamara is going to get held the way he keeps getting held, that it's going to be able to do what Kellen Wyatt did on the field for Indiana.
It's the old saying that every high school coach at the 2A level is going to tell you when someone on their team gets hurt. Like, well, it's the next man up. I mean, it's quite literally that simple here with Indiana. And the good thing is that Indiana's got a guy like Stephen Daly, who is just as equally as good as a pass rusher as Kellen Wyatt was, and also a guy by the name of Mario Landino, who's an edge rusher as well, who I think is going to...
It's a me, Mario.
Yeah. He's going to be a star for them defensively, I think, in the next few years, and maybe the rest of the year you're gonna see a little more Mario Landino and Stephen Daly in that edge rushing spot. Well, of course, you look at these stats here, and Indiana's 7-0 on the year, UCLA's 3-4, but you got to look at them like they're a 3-0 team, like Signetti was saying earlier this week. So that 3-4 record really isn't all that valid. Some of these UCLA stats really aren't that valid because you tack on their first 4 games in which they lost. So I didn't really have the time or necessarily the feeling to go through and try and comb through the last 3 games and match them up here. But Indiana scored 307 total points this year. They've allowed 81. UCLA's only scored 157 total points, and they've allowed 192 points. Indiana scored 44 points per game, 43.9 if you round up 44. They're allowing 11.5 points a game defensively. UCLA scoring 22.5 points a game. They're allowing 27.5 points a game. Indiana, 187 first downs on the year. UCLA, 137 first downs. Indiana, with both rushing and passing first downs, that total sits at 87 for each rushing and passing first downs. UCLA rushing first downs wise, 57. They've had 67 passing first downs. And both teams have gotten 13 first downs off of penalties. Indiana this year has rushed for 1,582 yards. UCLA's rushed for 1,197 yards. Indiana 286 carries. UCLA 240. Indiana's averaging 5.5 yards a carry. UCLA's averaging 5 yards per rush. Indiana, though, 226 yards rushing per game, 171 yards rushing for UCLA. Indiana's rushed for 14 touchdowns. UCLA's only rushed for 7. Passing wise, Indiana closing in on the 2,000 passing yard mark. And if they get a great game from Fernando Mendoza like we expect them to, they're going to eclipse that on Saturday. They have 1,899 passing yards on the season. UCLA with 1,355 passing yards. Indiana is 143 for 195 and 2 interceptions this year. UCLA is 135 for 209. They've thrown 5 interceptions as a team. Looking at some other things here, Indiana's passed the ball for 24 touchdowns this year. They've only allowed 3 from opposing teams. UCLA's only passed for 10 touchdowns. 12 have been passed by for their opponents. Indiana has 3,481 total yards of offense. UCLA with 2,552 total yards of offense. Indiana, 481 total plays. UCLA, 449. Indiana's averaging 7 yards per play to UCLA's 5.7. Indiana, 497.3 total yards per football game to UCLA's 364.5 yards a game. Think about that. Indiana is averaging just about 500 total yards of offense, which is just unreal. Indiana is 45 of 82 on third down conversions this year. They've converted 55% of third downs this season. UCLA's only converted 40% of first downs. They are 38 for 95. Here's where Indiana struggled this year, guys, is on fourth down conversions. They're 3 for 11 on fourth down this year. It seems like every team has the fourth down conversion edge in their favor. It seems like when we go through this every week. But again, Indiana's 3 for 11 on fourth down for 27%. UCLA is 12 of 18 on fourth down, good for 67%. Indiana scored 40 total touchdowns on the year. How about this one, guys? UCLA, in all their glory and what they've done here over these 3 weeks, have only scored 17 touchdowns the entire season. That's including this 3-game stretch in which they've been pretty dominant. Indiana's 9 for 10 on field goals, and UCLA is 12 for 15. Indiana is outscoring opponents 307 to 81. UCLA is getting outscored by their opponent 192 to 157. But the thing to look at here, and this is what Curt Cignetti said in his presser this week, is during this stretch here, in the first half of play, UCLA is outscoring opponents 58 to 17. So Indiana's going to have to be able to respond to those offensive plays if UCLA can, break through for them, and their defense is going to have to be on point.
You wouldn't know this, but how many of those 17 touchdowns by them have come in the last 3 weeks?
Great question.
I'd love to know just how bad things truly were before they made this switch, because they put numbers up. They've put numbers up. I'll give them that every week since this new crew's come in. They have put points on the board.
Is there a college program at any level that would hire Deshaun Foster after this?
You can always go down a level.
Man, this is the ugliest resume in the history of resumes.
And it only gets
Somebody
worse.
fixed it the next week.
It only gets worse if you watch that video that I advised to watch earlier. Watch that Big Ten introductory media conference. It's just bad.
It's a must-win game here for Indiana on Saturday. Every game's important, but got to be able to keep the foot on the gas from every game since about the Iowa game. The last two games, you got to be able to keep your foot on the gas and be able to put the game away when you need it to get put away. And Indiana's capable of doing that. I think they're going to do that on Saturday, and it should be a good day for Indiana. It's there's no other way of putting it. It's a nationally televised game. I feel like every game has been, I guess, but this is a big game. The game's on Fox. Got the legendary Gus Johnson on the call. I know probably everybody in here can't stand him, but I love him. Joel Klatt's a great analyst, and then you got the All-American girl in them that's going to be there. So I'm looking forward to being there on Saturday. I'll be there, of course, and looking forward to hopefully celebrating Indiana's 8th win of the year. The thing is with Ohio State not playing this week, is that there's not a possibility that Ohio State could get beat, although I'm not sure it would matter. But there's not a possibility where Indiana could jump to number one. So you have that to look at. But I think Indiana's gonna have not gonna say it's gonna be easy, but they're gonna have a nice path to victory, I think, on Saturday.
And it's a spotlight game. And there's not going to be a lot of those left on the schedule after this. This is, like we said, probably bizarrely enough, the toughest game left on the schedule. After this, it's Wisconsin and Maryland and, Coach Lombardi, Barry O up there in West Lafayette. Big Noon will be there. The national pregame will be there. Everybody's favorite, I'm sure, Dave Portnoy is going to be. He's going to be featuring some of the frat houses. He posted tonight. Indiana is an event, and it's another week that we don't have to think about the basketball program. So thank you very much, Coach Signetti, again for that. And it's it's a different mindset. It's like you spend your whole week thinking, how many days until I get to watch Indiana football again? And that was never the case before. Let's be real. It used to be by Thursday you were trying to talk yourself into, we might be able to beat Rutgers this week, man. If we can just not turn the ball over, and then Rutgers would be up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter. That's happened. I was at that game before. So it's fun to be an Indiana fan. It is another spotlight on the program, and just looking forward to hopefully another big win. And Grant, once again, there hasn't been a must-win since World War II. Let's keep remembering that.
My thoughts are this. It's going to be interesting to see how UCLA responds in that environment and playing at 9 a.m. their time. And that's going to be an early morning for them. And are they going to be sharp? Because I will say this, what UCLA I don't think wants to happen is they don't want Indiana to jump on them quickly and get a 3 or a 4 touchdown lead, especially at home, because that stadium they'll rock. I mean, because they're going to be fired up anyway because of Big Noon kickoff and everything that's going on. And Mike, I'm with you. I'm a lifelong Hoosier fan, and I have not had this much fun with football forever. When I was down there, I enjoyed the football games. It was fun. It was more of a social thing. But these kids that are on campus right now, they are very blessed.
Everybody give me your prediction for the game.
I'm going to go Indiana 38, UCLA 14. I don't think Indiana's going to blow them out. I don't know. It'll be like the Illinois game. Of course, I could be wrong, but I think Indiana will win favorably, but I don't think it'll be as eye-opening of a blowout as maybe people expect it to be, or maybe what we expected it to be about a month or two ago. I'm confident they're going to win. I'm going to go Indiana 38-14 over UCLA. UCLA scores a late touchdown when Indiana has second and third strings in the ball game.
I'll go big number 49-17 Indiana. After Fernando's 5th touchdown pass, the 3rd to Elijah Surratt, he will head to the sideline, take his helmet off, and blow dry his hair in honor of Tino Sinceri. Just saying, this, we got you, coach. This is for you. This is for that majestic head of hair that you have. We're still thinking of you, coach. So even though Fernando didn't play for Tino, everybody's got Tino on their minds this week. So for Tino, hashtag for Tino.
All right, I don't like to predict final scores. I'm just going to say IU anywhere from 17 to 30 points.
Coward. 47 to 6.
I'm always afraid I'm going to jinx my
You almost had the exact same score I did. That was the act, Michelle.
Grant and Mike will be back on Saturday, Sunday at the latest to react to Indiana's game against Michigan State on Saturday. Please join us for that one. That's all I got. Subscribe, like the video. Thank you. Thanks to Mike and Grant and Michelle for doing this. Pretty cool of them. Man, the time we're having right now at Central Indiana Sports Fans. Pacers, Colts, IU, football, Purdue basketball, Beaver, all the amateur stuff. We got a Final Four coming, all kinds of stuff. Go subscribe, please. We're at SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff. Also, the Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media. And I love Susan. Apparently it's 2 o'clock.